My name is Lauren, and I'm 21 years old. I've always believed that words can cut deeper than any blade. When I was younger, I thought teachers were supposed to be the ones who built us up, the ones who saw the potential in us even when we couldn't see it ourselves. But for me, one teacher's words became a shadow that followed me for years. If you've ever been told you're not good enough, this story is for you. Stay tuned until the end for the dramatic moment when I finally confronted my teacher with my success. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more true story-inspired revenge dramas. I was 15 at the time, sitting in the back row of Mrs. Carter's English class. She was the kind of teacher who seemed to enjoy tearing students down more than lifting them up. I still remember the way she looked at me that day, her glasses sliding down her nose, her lips curled in that thin, bitter smile. "Lauren," she said, her voice sharp enough to slice through the silence in the classroom. "You'll never succeed if you keep wasting time. Honestly, some people just aren't cut out for bigger things." The room went still. My classmates glanced at me, some smirking, others looking away in pity. My face burned, and I wanted to sink into the floor. I forced myself to scribble notes, pretending her words didn't matter, but inside, something cracked. After class, I confronted her timidly. "Mrs. Carter, why would you say that?" I asked, my voice shaking. She didn't even hesitate. "Because it's true, Lauren. Not everyone is meant to shine. Some of you'll always be average. And there's nothing wrong with that. Just don't expect the world to hand you more than you're worth." I carried those words home that day like a curse. I replayed them over and over, wondering if she was right. Was I destined to be average? To never prove myself? For weeks, I barely slept. I'd stare at my homework, her voice echoing in my head. But here's the thing about me, I don't break. Not easily. At first, I thought her words would destroy me. Instead, they lit a fire inside me. I decided right then that one day, I would prove her wrong. I didn't know how, I didn't know when, but I knew it would happen. Still, it wasn't easy. The following years were brutal. Every time I stumbled, I'd hear Mrs. Carter in my head mocking me. When I failed a math test, when I struggled to get into college, when I had to work 2 part-time jobs just to afford tuition, her voice was there. But so was the fire. I pushed myself harder than I ever thought possible. I studied late into the night, applied for internships nobody thought I could get, and taught myself skills that weren't even part of my classes. While everyone else was out partying, I was working on building something bigger for myself. The turning point came when I landed an internship at a marketing firm. I was only 19, and I walked into that office terrified, thinking I'd mess everything up. But instead, I thrived. My ideas were noticed. My creativity wasn't just average, it was praised. And for the first time, I realized Mrs. Carter's words had fueled the very determination that was now setting me apart. By 21, I had a job offer most people my age could only dream of, leading a project at a major firm, with a salary that still makes me shake my head in disbelief. And that's when I knew. It was time. Time to go back. Time to show Mrs. Carter that the average girl she dismissed had become more than she could ever have imagined. The idea hit me one evening when I was scrolling through emails at my desk. I had just wrapped up another successful campaign pitch when I noticed a newsletter from my old high school. They were inviting alumni to come back and speak at Career Day, sharing stories of where life had taken them after graduation. I stared at that email for a long time, my heart thumping in my chest. It was like the universe had just dropped an opportunity into my lap. This wasn't just any visit. This was my chance. I clicked reply before I could overthink it. "Hi, this is Lauren Hayes, class of 2018. I'd love to come back and share my story at Career Day." I hit send, my fingers trembling. Almost instantly, I regretted it. What if they said no? What if Mrs. Carter was still there and her words came back to paralyze me all over again? But 2 days later, I got the response. "Dear Lauren, we'd be honored to have you. It's wonderful to see our alumni succeeding, and your story will inspire our current students." I laughed when I read the word succeeding. If only they knew how much that word meant to me. From that day on, I prepared. I put together a presentation, not just about my career, but about resilience, determination, and proving doubters wrong. I wanted every student sitting in those chairs to hear what I had once needed to hear, that they were capable of more than anyone else's expectations. But I also had something more personal in mind. I practiced my speech over and over, rehearsing the exact moment when I would bring up Mrs. Carter's words, not with bitterness, but with calm strength. I wanted her to hear it in front of everyone, to realize that her cruelty hadn't defined me. It had fueled me. The morning of career day, I dressed carefully. A tailored blazer, crisp blouse, and heels that clicked confidently against the floor. I wanted to walk into that school not as the timid teenager who once shrank under her judgment, but as the woman I had become. When I pulled into the parking lot, memories came rushing back. The cracked pavement, the faded red bricks of the building, even the old oak tree by the entrance. It was all the same, but I wasn't. Inside, the halls buzzed with students shuffling to class. Some teachers glanced at me curiously as I walked toward the auditorium. And then there she was, Mrs. Carter. She looked older, of course, her hair streaked with gray, lines etched deeper into her face. But her sharp eyes were the same, and when they landed on me, I saw a flicker of recognition. "Lauren Hayes," she said slowly, like she couldn't quite believe it. "Well, this is a surprise." I smiled politely, keeping my voice steady. "Good morning, Mrs. Carter." It's been a long time. Her lips curved into a tight smile. "So, you're one of the guest speakers today? Interesting." I could almost hear the unspoken words. What could you possibly have to say that's worth hearing? I just nodded. Yes. I'm looking forward to it. As I walked past her toward the stage, my heart raced. This was it. Everything I had worked for, everything I had endured, it all led to this moment. The students filled the auditorium, chatting and laughing until the principal quieted them down. He introduced me warmly, speaking about how proud they were to see alumni achieving success in the real world. When I stepped onto the stage, I took a deep breath and scanned the audience. Dozens of young faces looked up at me, filled with curiosity. And near the back, I spotted Mrs. Carter, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. "Good morning, everyone," I began, my voice stronger than I felt. "My name is Lauren Hayes. I graduated from this very school just a few years ago. And I want to tell you a story." I launched into my speech, sharing how I had struggled in high school, how I had doubted myself, how I had worked multiple jobs while pursuing my dreams. The students leaned forward, listening intently. And then the moment came. "There was a time," I said slowly, "when someone in this very school told me I'd never succeed. That I was destined to be average. That I was destined to be average. That I shouldn't expect too much from life." A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd. I let the words sink in before continuing. But here's the thing, I didn't let those words define me. I let them drive me. I worked harder. I pushed myself further. And now, standing here before you, I can tell you, don't ever let anyone else decide your worth. You are capable of more than they can see. The room was silent, every eye on me. And then, slowly, the students began to clap. The sound grew louder, filling the auditorium, until it was thunderous. I glanced at Mrs. Carter. For the first time, she looked unsettled. Her tight composure cracked just enough for me to see it, the flicker of guilt, of realization. And in that moment, I felt the sweetest victory. When the applause finally died down, I thanked the students and stepped away from the podium. My hands trembled slightly, not from nerves anymore, but from the adrenaline of release. Years of buried pain, humiliation, and determination had just poured out in front of hundreds of people. As I walked off stage, several students stopped me. "Your story was amazing," one girl said, her eyes wide. I needed to hear that. "I feel like everyone tells me I can't do things, but you proved them wrong." "Same here," a boy added, nodding eagerly. That was wow. Just wow. I smiled at them, warmth spreading through me. This was why I had done it, not just to confront Mrs. Carter, but to show these kids that they could rise above doubt. But then I felt it. A presence behind me. I turned and there she was. Mrs. Carter. She stood a few feet away, her arms crossed, her lips pressed tightly together. For a long moment, she didn't say anything. And neither did I. The tension was thick, like the pause before a storm breaks. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was quieter than I expected, almost guarded. You certainly made an impression. I tilted my head, studying her. That was the idea. Her eyes narrowed slightly. You didn't need to single me out like that. It was unprofessional. I took a breath, keeping my voice calm. I never mentioned your name, Mrs. Carter. But if you recognized yourself in my words, maybe you should ask why. Her cheeks flushed, the first real crack in her armor. You don't understand, she said quickly. Teachers, sometimes we have to push students. Sometimes being harsh is the only way to get through to them. I shook my head. No. There's a difference between pushing someone and tearing them down. What you said to me all those years ago, it wasn't encouragement. It was cruelty. And it stayed with me for years. Her gaze dropped to the floor, and for the first time, she looked small. I didn't think you'd remember. Of course I remembered, I said softly. Words matter. They stick. And maybe you didn't realize it, but what you said could have broken me. It didn't, but it could have. She looked up, her eyes glistening slightly. I almost didn't believe it at first, but there was something like regret there. You turned out well, she murmured. Better than I expected. I let out a dry laugh. Better than you expected, that's exactly the point. You underestimated me. And I think you underestimate a lot of your students. I hope today showed you something. She didn't reply. Just stood there, her jaw tight, as though she wanted to defend herself but couldn't. After a long silence, she said, Well, congratulations, Lauren. Truly. I mean that. I studied her face, trying to decide if she meant it. Maybe she did. Maybe she didn't. But either way, I didn't need her validation anymore. I had already proven everything I needed to her, to the students, and most importantly, to myself. I didn't come here for your congratulations, I said quietly. I came here to make sure no other kid feels the way I once did. With that, I turned and walked away. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Students came up to me. Teachers shook my hand. Even the principal thanked me for sharing such an inspiring story. But all I could think about was that moment with Mrs. Carter, the look in her eyes, the silence that followed. When I finally drove away from the school, I rolled down my window and let the cool breeze wash over me. For the first time in years, I felt free. Like a weight I hadn't even realized I was still carrying had finally been lifted. I realized something important that day. Revenge isn't always loud or cruel. Sometimes, the best revenge is simply proving someone wrong with your success. Sometimes, it's walking back into the room as the person they said you'd never become, and watching their world shift because of it. And maybe Mrs. Carter would change. Maybe she'd think twice before crushing another student's spirit. Or maybe she wouldn't. But either way, I had reclaimed my story. And that was enough. When I woke up the next morning, I half expected to feel the same old tightness in my chest, the lingering ghost of Mrs. Carter's words that had haunted me for years. But it wasn't there. For the first time since I was 16, I felt light. Free. As I made coffee in my apartment, I replayed everything from the day before. The applause. The students' wide eyes. The silence in the room when I dropped the truth about my teacher. And then Mrs. Carter's face. That crack in her confidence when she realized I had remembered every cruel word. I couldn't help but smile. Not because I had embarrassed her, but because I had finally turned my pain into power. Later that week, I got an email from the principal of the high school. He thanked me again for coming, and then he wrote something that made my heart skip a beat. Several students who attended your speech asked if we could create a mentorship program. They said they want someone like you to guide them, to show them that success is possible even when people doubt you. I sat there staring at the screen, tears filling my eyes. This was bigger than Mrs. Carter. Bigger than me. What I had done wasn't just revenge. It was planting seeds for others. I agreed to help, of course. I started coming back once a month to meet with students. We'd sit in a circle in the library and share stories, dreams, fears, all the things most of them never told their teachers. I told them the truth. That doubt is inevitable, but it doesn't define you. That sometimes people in authority, teachers, bosses, even parents, get it wrong. And that the only person who gets to decide your worth is you. One day, after one of those sessions, a shy girl with glasses came up to me. She whispered, "My teacher told me I'll never get into college because I'm not smart enough. But after hearing you, I think maybe I can." I hugged her and whispered back, "Don't just think it. Know it. And then prove them wrong." That moment alone made everything worth it. As for Mrs. Carter, I never saw her again after that day. Some said she retired a year later. Others claimed she'd become a lot softer with students, less biting in her remarks. I don't know if that was because of me, but maybe, just maybe, I planted a seed in her too. Years later, when people asked me about my greatest success, I never mentioned the money or the recognition or even the degrees on my wall. My greatest success was walking back into that high school, facing the woman who had once crushed my spirit, and showing her she hadn't won. Because success isn't just about where you end up. It's about proving to yourself that the people who doubted you were wrong all along. Looking back now, I realized something I didn't see back then. Mrs. Carter gave me a strange kind of gift. Not the kind she intended, of course. But her doubt lit a fire in me that never went out. Every time I wanted to quit, I heard her voice in my head telling me I'd never succeed. And every time, I pushed harder just to prove her wrong. In the end, she was both my greatest enemy and the reason I became unstoppable. So, if you've ever been told you're not enough, let me tell you what I told those students. Don't let their voice become your truth. Let it become your fuel. Because one day you'll have your own moment, your own stage, your own spotlight, and you'll show them all what you're made of. And trust me, nothing feels sweeter than that.